Welcome back to Fresh Economic Thinking with Cameron Murray and regular co-host Jonathan Gadir. Welcome back, Jonathan.
Hi, Cameron. So, yeah, thanks for allowing me this chance to come on again. And just because I had some things I wanted to whinge about, basically. So, thanks for giving me the opportunity. And I know that you heard my whinge sort of in brief before, and I think you've got a great economic hook to hang it on. And that is the concept of credence goods, i.e., when we really have no way of knowing whether what we want is what we're getting, or whether what we got is good or bad, and then how that leads to the opportunity for economic actors to do shakedowns and just extract money from us. So credence goods,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So credence goods in economics are pretty common, but we don't talk about them much. And they're essentially services uh, that you get where you don't know the quality before you buy it, and you still don't even know the quality after you buy it. So you can, going to the movie is not a credence good, even though you can't judge the quality in advance. Once you've seen it, you know if it was good or bad. So,
Yeah.
whereas a credence good is like you take your car to the mechanic and they go, yeah, I fixed the twangle fangle thing under the thing, and yeah, now it's fine. You don't know if that was the problem. You don't know if it worked. You don't know anything. You just gave someone money and they could have sold you anything. You don't know if it was a good repair, a bad repair, a dodgy fix. You still don't know afterwards. So that's a credence good, and it's for a lot of services like surgery. You don't know if you had a good surgery afterwards. You could be leaking. You could have bad stitches. You might find out 20 years later that they left the scissors in there or some sticky tape, or they took out the wrong organ. They took there's actually places where they'll take a kidney while they're in there taking your appendix out and things like that. So um, these are credence goods, and so there's definitely it's really important to have mechanisms to convey good information to consumers, right? So this is why the motor vehicle, the mechanics, you have like Motor Traders Association or whatever the Mechanics Association is, right? So you have a private body say, hey, if you join up, you can put our sticker out the front, but we'll come and just check on you periodically because for us, the incentive is you do a good job. It makes my brand more valuable. But for you, you've got this incentive to shirk on every single customer and scam them. And so the market can resolve those things. Sometimes you need some more public external oversight. So, for example, in construction, building inspectors, problem with building inspectors is the builder pays the building inspector, right?
Yeah.
And there's not really this external, builders inspectors certified association. The consumer doesn't see that, they don't get it. There's no mechanism there. It's just the builder goes, yeah, we had it, it's done, right? They inspected the slab, then we poured it. They inspected the frame, then you don't see it. You might not even get a photo, but they might have put untreated timber all through your house, right? Or the wrong stuff. So this is really normal, and these sectors are where you get a lot of scams emerging. Like there's sometimes a fine line between, you know, the Mechanics Association of Australia, which signals quality, and the shakedown like mafia. If you want to operate here, just give me money, or I'll smash your windows every night. There's a bit of a uh, there's a bit of a gray area there, and it's a really tricky thing. But and it's one of those industries that takes time to evolve to build that reputation and quality.
So I guess, Cameron, this leads me to my whinge, the core of it. So it's just kind of a libertarian point, really, rather than anything, I guess, amazingly original. But like there's a whole group of organizations in our society that are allowed, in fact, authorized by the government to shake down society. So there's sort of the ones where there's a social good that's really kind of clear. So, okay, let's say it's surgeons, and you've got the Royal College of Surgeons or whatever, or it's solicitors, and there's the Law Society, and they're allowed to charge like ridiculous amounts of money to their members because, hey, if you're a lawyer or a surgeon, what are you going to do? You've spent all this money in time and put all this, blood, sweat, and tears into becoming a professional in your field. If you want to continue being a professional in your field, well, you're just going to have to cough up hundreds of dollars a year to keep your membership in that organization, because this body has the legal imprimatur to deny you. They're the gatekeepers, they're the troll on the bridge. They can deny you your livelihood if you don't keep paying up. Now, obviously, there's some social good there somewhere. Question is, do we, is there, are we, do we have a family of completely unaccountable organizations because the government's just gone, well, that's, professional stuff. We don't know. So it's up to you to police yourselves and do whatever you want. And it's sort of like blends. There's sort of a spectrum, and you kind of it sort of in some cases can blur into just scam like shakedown. So like when you get to something a bit fuzzy, like, oh, yoga teaching. So yoga teaching, like, oh, some organization run by some clever person starts an organization and declares themselves to be the organization that certifies yoga teachers in Australia. And just by a process of kind of good marketing and good PR actually makes a lot of people believe that to be the case. And so once enough people believe that to be the case, it just is the case. Because if you want to be hired or you want to go and do classes at some company every lunchtime, well, they're going to ask, have you been certified? Have you got the certificate? And you're going to be paying thousands of dollars a year for that. And of course the training, to get the certificate, you got to do the training. Who does the training? Well, they do the training, and you can pay for that, right? And then on the far extreme, you get like just pure shakedown.
Yeah.
But I think the pure shakedown example I have is a strange one. It's one I came across in the previous part of my career when I worked in the communications and entertainment sector. And it's around copyright law, and it's because copyright law is just the weirdest sort of law, the weirdest set of principles, and it's like a Galapagos island of law. Basically, it's just it doesn't resemble much else. Or maybe defamation law is another Galapagos island, but essentially, like what you have is you have certain organizations that are collecting agencies, like the Copyright Agency Limited, that just declared themselves at some point to be like, we're the organization that is going to put license fees on various activities like photocopying in libraries, and we're going to force the libraries to pay. We're going to get the government to allow us. We're going to get the government to allow us through legislation to be the tax collector, to be the one that goes and forces them to pay the universities or libraries to pay us license fees. And we're going to take that license fee and we're going to divvy up small pieces of money and distribute it to authors, the membership of our organization, authors or artists or whatever, musicians, APRO, like the Australian Recording, whatever they call, Recording Artists Association. So those sorts of organizations that just sort of manage through like entrepreneurial wile and guile, marketing skill, to convince the government to just make them this monopoly organization that just does shakedowns.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm using that colorful language because I'm against certain principles in copyright law, but I'm sure the defenders of copyright law would say, no, this is not a shakedown. This is just justifiable reward, justifiable compensation for poor artists, blah, blah, blah. But then you notice that, these agencies give themselves nice offices and very high salaries, and they travel overseas to conferences, and the staff sort of grow and grow and grow. Anyway, you get my point.
I get your point. And to be honest, like I think the principle you've explained, we started with Credence Goods, and then we said, we need sometimes a middleman to verify the quality. And so we've got this sort of self-declared yoga, organization, and then we've got this self-declared, we're in charge of copyright. Sometimes I suspect things like academic publishing have gone from quality signals historically to shakedowns currently, because they've sort of abused their position, and now everyone's lining up to play the games. I mean, the reviewers don't get paid, the editors don't get paid, the authors don't get paid, but guess what? The universities pay to access the articles written by their staff. So I think in general, we've got to be alert to these changes, where something that maybe starts out with some net benefit degrades over time into a pure shakedown. And I think, yeah, there's lots of examples out there, and I wish there was a better name for this pattern that you see. Do you have other examples? Like maybe we can come up with a name by the end of this podcast, and we'll become famous, and then we'll copyright the name, and anyone who wants to use it has to charge us a fee or something like that.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, there's a lot of
I'll give you one
yeah,
while
yeah.
you think. The Association for Psychologists, the professional body,
Yep.
they keep increasing their study requirements and their professional development requirements and their fees for memberships, and it's really becoming a little bit of a mafia there, a little bit detached from skills and quality assurance that you'd want it to be, and much more about hoop jumping and raising money for the association and its cabal of staff. So, I think it's a broad pattern for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and it's very like this example is extremely similar to, I think, what originally caused me to start thinking about this whinge, which was
Hmm.
the professional organization of the field I'm in now, which is privacy law or privacy professionals. Um, which is like, I was thinking, the International Association of Privacy Professionals, they've got this weird little address in New Hampshire in the US. And I started sort of looking on LinkedIn and on their website. I was like, how did this organization get started? And effectively, it's kind of similar to the way I just described the yoga organization. You know, it's just like some entrepreneurial person has just, used their marketing and PR guile to set up an organization and, market themselves into existence as a sort of troll gatekeeper for a group. And
Mm,
there's no law in the case of the IA, International Association of Privacy Professionals. There's no law that says, yeah, you have to get certified, but people are getting certified. People pay thousands of dollars for these exams, and it's just because people have just
yeah.
decided, based on obviously absorbing a very clever, campaign of self promotion, that this organization is the key to a career in this, or this certification is a career. So yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it's
it's definitely possible, and I think that's part of unfortunately the part of the job of government is to recognize that there's a free market. We can start any business we want, but sometimes there are these opportunities where businesses start and they can put themselves in this middleman position and create quite a lot of control over a sector, sort of monopolize it mafia like. And instead of smashing everyone's windows, they still taking a fee to ensure the industry operated like it used to anyway. It's yeah, so I think we've got to be on the lookout for those, and I wish we knew more about this pattern. So if any listeners out there can tell me, yes, the ACCC or whoever is on the lookout for these types of groups, please let me know. I'm very
yeah,
interested.
yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Like at some point, a mafia shakedown just starts being called a license.
Well,
you
yeah,
know, and
I
it's the
mean,
it's
you could say at the end of the day, governments are just the last mafia standing, right? Like,
Yeah,
um,
that's the obvious libertarian point, right?
yeah,
It's like, well, what is the state? It's a mafia that takes your money at gunpoint and says, "Oh,
yeah.
we'll give
I,
you
and
this stuff."
I guess we think we have some control over the operation of the state through our democratic process. So we prefer that in some ways, and I think that's fair. I think we do. I think politicians are surprisingly responsive, particularly to marginal electorate issues. Um, but yeah, it's an odd one. Is there a counter argument for this?
Well,
Is there
well,
a
I think
economic case that these are fine, and in the long run, if it's good, it will stick around. If it's bad, it will go. So there's no policy, um, no justification for a policy intervention. What do you make of that argument?
well, I think the politicians are never gonna the politicians have a good sense of what the public wants in terms of they're never going to like say, oh no, we're not going to have a body that certifies surgeons. They're just always going to be reluctant to delve into it. But I'd like to know whether the ACCC does delve into the workings of a professional body to see that they're not acting in a completely unfair way. But yeah, do I have much faith that, an organization like the ACCC can make a difference? No. Um,
Mm.
but I think you said something about gambling and casinos being kind of good examples
Yeah,
of.
well, I mean, it's sort of like, well, a lot of Australians want to ban lots of gambling, but then we end up, licensing them and funding ourselves with them and creating this little uh, uh, collective interest group around basically keep gambling because it's a good revenue source. And yeah, I'm I always find those incentives can become a little bit perverse, right? But back to the point about democratic control and whatnot, there have been a lot of changes in Australia requiring casinos, for example, to be much more strict about taking money off people and sending people home if they spend more than a certain amount, or understanding where their money comes from and requiring them to comply with this know your customer type laws that the banks need to comply with. So that has really lost them a lot of money. So maybe this is an example where, in the long run, there's this tension between democratic pressure on governments to do something and then industry pressures and then the joint incentives to keep the gambling going and the tax revenues coming in. Yeah, it's always messy like that. But I
You
think
know,
it is a good
yeah,
example.
yeah. I think this brings me back to my sociology readings from undergrad days. Robert Michel's, who wrote about the iron law of oligarchy, that is, any organization um, will eventually become oligarchic. Um,
Oh,
you know, if it's a union or psychologists or surgeons or law, like the people in charge of the organization, while drawn from a broader membership, will eventually create an oligarchic, class that serves their own interest. And he was studying this German Social Democratic Party, which was, of course, one of the first and most successful socialist slash communist parties. And because they joined the parliamentary arena, they had to get into that game of compromising and doing deals with other parties, and so you eventually end up with an oligarchy that has different interests from its members. So
yeah,
maybe the psychologist's example or whatever, those kind of examples, that's just the iron law of oligarchy at work, where the
yeah.
organization is going to try to enrich itself, preserve its, and increase its privileges. And, people talk about that for unions, I guess that has
I was
happened for
just
unions.
going to mention, I
Yeah.
think unions, when they've been around a while, end up working in the favor of the union, administrators and leaders rather than members, quite often. So you're saying, well, what we're talking about here is there are issues in the economy where people don't really know the quality of things. We talked about credence goods. And then there's all these middlemen that pop up, whether it's unions, whether it's industry associations, whether it's copyright guys, or whatever it is. And although at first they may be useful and do something beneficial, the iron law of oligarchy says they will always degrade over time and operate in their own self-interests. I, I, I think it's true. I'm with you. I'm sold. I just want to know what we do about it. How do we reject these? Do we have to form new organizations, new unions, new sort of yoga standards bodies? Like how does the market work for these over time, you think? I suspect it
Yeah.
must to some degree, but there might be a lot of costs. It might be a long-term thing.
Yeah, look, I think it has to, like, there has to be a willingness on the part of the political class to not go, oh no, this is professional expert stuff. We don't know about this. And to just go, like, we don't care about the expertise that you claim to have. You have to, function within. But let's say the average earnings of your profession are X. You can't be charging more than Y. Something like that, that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know.
Hmm. Great.
or, your exams have to be free,
I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up, Jonathan.
Okay,
I
cool.
think we should definitely try and dig in and articulate this pattern that is very subtle again in the future. So if anyone has any comments, thoughts, suggestions, please leave them wherever you've heard this podcast. Jonathan, thanks for the chat.
Thank you.